I'm Craig Timm, and this is ACAMS Live. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today, those who are tuning in live and those watching later on the replay. Feel free to say hi. Let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat. If you have a question, put it in the chat, too. If you see me looking down at all, I've got all the questions coming in right here on my phone. So I'm not paying attention. I'm trying to get to your questions. If we can't get to them during the discussion, I'll spend some time throughout the day today looking through them and trying to answer what we can. Well, today we are going to talk about a romance investment scam known as pig butchering. By now, most of you have probably received a random text that looks like a wrong number. And there's a good chance that that is the start of a pig butchering scam. The scammers look for any way they can to engage you. And the scary thing is they've got a playbook for every potential victim. From recently divorced single mother to young male in their 20s, they know how to make a connection. And all of this effort is just to gain trust, whether it's romantic or friendship. The goal is to gain trust. And they'll spend weeks, if not months, doing this. Eventually, once they gain your trust, they convince you to invest in some scheme, typically involving cryptocurrency. After they've gotten you to invest everything they possibly can, they disappear and you've lost it all. It's devastating. And victims around the world are losing billions of dollars. And that's who we want to focus on today, the victims. And joining me to do this is Erin West. Erin is a prosecutor. She's a deputy district attorney in Santa Clara County, California, where she's a member of the REACT task force. This is Santa Clara County's elite high-tech investigative task force. And for those of you outside the United States, Santa Clara County is the home of Silicon Valley. So this is like the highest tech of high tech, the elite of the elite. And that's what her team focuses on. For the last couple of years, she has been a force of nature fighting against pig butchering. She's founded an organization called Operation Shamrock, which is a network of law enforcement officers and agents fighting this terrible crime. And really, she's just done everything she possibly can, in her words, to educate, seize, and disrupt. So there's no one better today to join us than Erin. So Erin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. First of all, I want to say I love when I hear someone else describe pig butchering, and it's exactly how I would describe it, because that shows me that this is a consistent operation that is happening over and over and over in the same way. And the more we can educate about that basic typology, the more we can protect our victims or our humans from becoming victims. So for a long time, I've been wanting to talk to victims more directly about this. And I'm so grateful that ACAMS has offered me an opportunity to talk to you today and talk to victims. I invited a lot of victims that have reached out to me, and they reached back out and said they're going to be here today. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Well, we are grateful to have you here today. And I'd encourage everyone, this is a little different than we normally do it. ACAMS is an anti-financial crime organization, but this is so much broader than that. And so I'd encourage you afterwards, share the replay of this with your friends and family. You know, we are not going to, Erin's a prosecutor, but she's going to tell you, we're not going to prosecute our way out of this. We have to educate our way out of it. And that's what Erin's going to help us do today. And today we're going to focus the discussion on victims, and we're going to get really practical with advice for victims, for those who have friends or family members who they think might be victims, for those who have clients who they think might be victims. But where I want to start first is, Erin, with you and your interaction with victims, because I suspect that it's that probably as much as anything else that's made you so passionate about wanting to fight this terrible crime. So I was wondering if we could just start by you telling us about your experience over the last several years, hearing from victims and how that's had an impact on you and your work.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that my whole passion about this is very victim driven. I've been a prosecutor for 25 years. I spent a good part of my career doing sexual assault. I work in hate crimes today, and I work with these victims. And this type of victimization of people is one that I have never seen before. And their stories are compelling. When I first heard about this crime in March of 2022, it was the way it was described by the victim that made me think that we need to take a closer look at it. at first blush, it's a fraudulent, it's a financial fraud where the suspects are overseas and the money appears to be going overseas. And it seems like a tough one to take on. But then when I started hearing the stories of victims and hearing the absolute humanity of this, that they are emotionally destroyed, that they are financially absolutely crushed, that it's because of these victims that I feel like we need to take a closer look at this major crime. So my interactions with them, I think that there are a few of us in the United States. When I think of my fellow prosecutors in in New York and that are hearing these cases live from victims, it really is so emotionally, it takes such an emotional toll that these people are really devastated. And the human side of interacting with them is what really compels me to be so passionate about getting help for them, or at least giving them some reasonable expectations of what they can expect from the criminal justice system.
Yeah, that's the tough part, right? Like, you wish the FBI could help every victim out there, right? But this is such a massive problem that just that's just not going to happen. And so I think really that's, more than anything, what we want to do today is try to get across from that. And maybe let's start there. If someone has been victimized, what are the steps they should be taking? What should their expectations be along the way? What might work, what's not going to work, just help them sort of understand what the process is and where expectations should be set and where to best spend their time.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do that. What I think the first thing that victims need to understand is they need to understand exactly what this is. And there's, when this first started happening back in 2022, there wasn't a lot of media about it. Today, there are great video productions that are on YouTube. There was a great CNN story that came out last week, that there are opportunities for victims to educate themselves about what this is and the magnitude of it. I think our victims think often, the victims that reach out to me will think that they believe that their scammer is located in the United States because that's what their scammer said. And they will show me pictures of their scammer in the United States, and they'll believe that they actually know where this scammer is located. And for a number of these victims, it is news to them that this crime is happening on a mass industrial, well-organized, well-funded scale by Chinese organized crime. And that, and when I say Chinese organized crime, I mean the syndicates that we are familiar with that have been involved in crime for years have now pivoted to pig butchering. And if you do any type of research, you'll see these compounds and you will see that they're located all over Southeast Asia. And they house, according to the UNODC, over 120,000 people in Cambodia and 100,000 people in Myanmar that have been human trafficked to do this dirty business. So I think the first thing I would want to explain to victims with so much empathy is that it's not as easy to go find your scammer as you might think, that your scammer is actually being forced to do this work, and that really who we need to be going after are the major kingpins that are running this operation. And that's a bigger job than Santa Clara County can take on. So what the good news is for victims is that we have been able, in certain cases, to get money back for them. And we have been able to help them with getting some of their resources back. So let's talk about exactly how to put them in the best position to make that happen. The first thing they should do is they should go to their local police department. And when they go to their local police department, they should go armed with the knowledge that this is a pig butchering case. And they should provide the police department with what the police department needs in order to make their best stab at getting any resources back. And that is a transaction hash. That's the ID of the transaction of how they sent this money. And they need the deposit address. So if you think about it like on a check, if you're not that familiar with this, on a check, you've got an ID number on the check and you've got an address to which you wrote that check, the person that you wrote that check to. And that's what they need to know, because that's how police can most easily triage this and see if they can secure money back for victims. The second thing they need to do is they need to report it to IC3. That's ic3.gov. And ic3.gov is the FBI. And they may think, like I thought 2 years ago, that when you report this to the FBI will take up your individual case. And what we are seeing is that the sheer magnitude of this crime is such that the FBI does not have the bandwidth to investigate one-off cases. The FBI ideally should be looking at the trend and the massive transnational organized crime that's happening here. So when our victims report to IC3, they should expect that they will not hear back from the FBI. They should expect that when there is a big seizure by the DOJ, they will not hear from the DOJ unless they are one of the victims that will be helped. And I say this with so much empathy and so many good feelings for these victims, that they're really expecting to hear back and to be part of the process. And that's just not something that's going to be happening with pig butchering. It's just way too big.
Yeah, you know, one question that came in as a follow-up to that, I think one other thing to add is just, you know, speed does matter. This money moves very quickly. And so, the faster you can start this process, the better, because the money will be gone very quickly if it's not already. The other question we had coming in from Luis Hernandez in the chat, so thank you very much, Luis, was they said in their experience that often local law enforcement might turn victims away. What do you do in that scenario? If, you know, for a long time, local law enforcement, I think in a lot of places didn't understand it. I think that's changing now, in large part thanks to you and your work. But what might you tell someone that they've gone to their local law enforcement and they just don't give them the time of day?
First of all, I want to say I hear you. I know this is happening. I'm sorry that this is happening. I have quotes taken from emails I've received from you that I put in my presentations, your actual words saying that you've been turned away from police departments. I know this is happening. And that's why I started the Crypto Coalition. And the Crypto Coalition is a group of 1,400 active law enforcement from local, state, federal, and international who we talk about this crime all the time. And every day there are new people joining it. So what I will say is it's getting better, but it is not where it needs to be. I think there's a couple of barriers for police. Number one, they've just never heard of pig butchering. They don't know what it is. Number two, they're not familiar with cryptocurrency, and they are not ready to take on the learning curve that cryptocurrency requires. So a couple of suggestions for victims. Number one, you need to be your own advocate in this situation. I know you've been through the ringer. I know you have been through the worst situation that you have ever found yourself in, but this is the time to walk in, put emotions aside, and really tell police that this is a international, transnational crime. It's well known. Perhaps go in with some armed with some articles about this that you can pass on. Perhaps go in with letting them know about the React Task Force and Operation Shamrock. Tell them to look me up on LinkedIn. But really, you have to self-advocate here, because they're not going to be ready for you. And what one of the question that was raised is super important, Craig, because if you are more than a week after your deposit, we're not going to be able to help you anymore. The bad guys are just moving the money too quickly, and it's super unfortunate. And there's really not much that anyone will be able to do for you. But at least, let me tell you why it's important to report to both PD, police department, and IC3. The way we get resources put on this crime is when we can show how massive the problem is. So even if this is embarrassing, humiliating, send that report to IC3, tell FBI that you are part of this massive scourge and that you've been harmed too. it's looking at that data that the FBI decides how they are going to allocate resources. And once they see how massive this problem is, I'm hoping that they will be able to put more and more resources on it to help all of us.
Such a great point, because it is such a, people feel shame, they feel embarrassed, right? And it's natural. But I think it's important to sort of move beyond that to try to get money back, but also thinking about it like you're not just helping yourself. You may help prevent this for the next person by you reporting, even if you don't get your money back. If that means law enforcement gets more resources, if that means we've got 3 more Erin Wests out there tracking these bad guys down, you may help, a family member, a friend down the road. And so it's so important to report. I'm just going to tick off 2 more questions just real quick, because they sort of relate more to the typology and how this works. And we're focusing on victims today, but we've got a lot of resources around that. So the first one was, and I'm going to link to some of those in here. We've got, ACAMS has an infographic that's free. We did a alert with Homeland Security investigations that's free. We'll link to all of that. There's a recent report from the UN on this that's also free. So we'll put all of those in the chat so you can really learn. The one question, 2 questions that I'll just hit on quickly is, one, are you saying the scammers are human trafficked? Yes, that's what's so deplorable about this. There are victims throughout the chain of bad activities. So typically it's someone in Southeast Asia that's convinced, say, hey, come to Thailand, we've got a great tech job. They come there, and then against their will, at gunpoint, they're smuggled across the border into Myanmar or somewhere else, right? Like somewhere over there, and forced under gunpoint to work in these compounds. And so it is really, and the numbers according to the UN are over 100,000 victims in several countries. There are complexes that look like major universities or small towns that are just scammers. It's really scary. And so the UN report that we'll link to has some great resources and describes that in detail. The other question that came through from Franca is investment scheme the same as pig butchering? It's a subset, right? There are a lot of investment schemes. This is one kind, right? It's just like pig butchering is a bit of a romance scam, investment scheme mix. So it's when we talk about investment schemes, this is kind of that. I know we want to talk about victims. So Erin, I hit on that quickly. Anything you want to add to either of those?
Yeah, I think that's why this pig butchering business is so compelling, because we have victims victimizing victims, and we have people who were facing unemployment in their home country, who thought they were going to go work in tourism in Bangkok, and the next thing they know, they are being bused to compounds and locked down and forced to do this dirty work 16 hours a day. So and the only people benefiting are organized criminals. So that's why this is such a scourge and such a blight on humanity. It's a horrible, horrible thing. So, so we've got a lot of victims here. I mean, today we're talking about our victims of the financial fraud, but there's human trafficked victims that are still being enslaved in Southeast Asia as we speak.
And the victims of the fraud are emotionally victimized, right? These person gain their trust. It's like not only have they lost everything, they might have lost who they think is their best friend. And it may sound silly to some people, but that's real. And so there is just so much devastation. And, if you haven't been victimized, and thankfully, a lot of people haven't, it's a good chance that someone in your universe will be, or is in the process of, because the scale of this is just so massive. So how about we turn now to, if you have a friend, if you have a relative who's, they've made a new friend online, they're, chatting up with them, what should they do in terms of helping their friend or relative, get out early, or once they're, it's too late, once they sort of, realize they've been victimized?
This is a real problem. And I was on vacation last weekend, and I got a call from a family member who said that a separate family member, a man in his 70s, was not hearing reason. And he believes he is absolutely in love with this 40-year-old woman. And I saw the pictures and they look like AI to me. But he is 100% in this. And even when I think it speaks to the level of sophistication in the mental manipulation of the victims that they are in this, and it is really difficult to convince them otherwise. One thing I would say is lead with empathy. There is so much about this that is hard for people who have not experienced it to understand, and it is very easily dismissed. A study from the World Health Organization has recently come out saying that one of our biggest worldwide problems and that should be looked at on a health bandwidth is loneliness. And so if we start with that we have a lot of lonely people, and all of a sudden they're finding themselves in a situation where they have someone who is really interested in them and is listening to them and is asking them about their day and is concerned about them and making sure that their life is good. The destruction, the unwillingness of wanting to believe that isn't true runs deep. And so we need to be kind and realize that our family members, our friends who have fallen victim to this are really experiencing a relationship that is meaningful to them. And so coming at them, telling them this is wrong, this is stupid, you're dumb, isn't going to help you. Somehow we need to get to them and explain, I understand, and I understand how good this must feel, but I want to tell you why it probably isn't real. And this goes back to the beginning of the conversation, Craig, where you lay out pig butchering and you tell me what it is. What we've found is that when we match victims, current victims, to prior victims, and we get them talking, they can convince each other, because they can say, well, did he then move the conversation to WhatsApp? And did he tell you this? And did he send you these pictures? And is he saying that it's his uncle that's teaching you how to do this crypto? Once they can see that it is a script, as you say, that it is a absolute typology that is replicated over and over and over because it's so successful, that's when our victims can start to see, oh, okay, maybe this isn't what I thought this was. And
yeah. No, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's where we've achieved success, is with matching them with being able to tell them the story before they even tell us.
And you can do that virtually too, right? Like there are, thankfully, some people have come forward, right? There's more of this coming out. That CNN article that you mentioned, we'll find that link to it too. It was really great. It's tough, but if you don't know a victim, you're out there, you're like, well, that'd be great, but I don't know anybody, right? There are resources out there that you can try to start to share with them. If you don't have that face-to-face, knowledge or know a victim that you can put together in person. We've got some.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. No, I was just going to say one more thing about that is the more that we can reduce the feeling of a stigma for those people, the more they are willing to come forward, which in turn gives us more data to give to the FBI to show how big this problem is. It's all part of the process of fighting this.
I mean, I think we have to come to terms that we're all going to get scammed at some point in our lives. I was traveling not long ago into a country where I knew there was this type of scam, and they got me, right? I didn't lose any money, but they got me as much as I know, right? Like we have to overcome, everyone is going to become a victim of some kind at some point. And so that's where leading with empathy, thankfully I didn't lose any money, right? But could have been, right? Like this could happen, literally could happen to anybody. And so I love the leading with empathy and kindness. We've got a lot of questions. So ACAMS is obviously an anti-financial crime organization. We've got a lot of people in financial institutions, in cryptocurrency exchanges, wherever they might be, who we have seen several questions come through saying, okay, what do we do with our institution? If our client is a victim, how might we help them?
I have a couple of ideas. Number one, amplify, educate, bring it up the chain at your banking institution. Because here's the problem with pig butchering. Everybody has a piece of this problem. Banking has a piece of it. Telco has a piece of this. Social media has a piece of this. DOJ has a piece. Everybody has a piece of it. So the more that we can raise the consciousness within financial services to understanding that this is a major problem that we need to collaborate internationally on is a huge part of it. Elevating what you're seeing on the ground level to people who can make big decisions is a huge part of this. But while you are on the ground level with these victims, there's a couple of things. One, know this typology. The typology is going to be that your victim, and this is not limited to elders. This is limited to anybody that has any money and has a smartphone. Those are our potential victims. Anybody that's coming in or electronically trying to move big amounts of money that is unusual for them. Now, what our bad actors are doing is arming them with all kinds of lies to tell you. So what's helpful is to know what lies are going to be coming your way, to build relationships with other financial institutions that are seeing this so that you can compare notes on what you're hearing. But I wonder if there's a situation where when we're watching people liquidate massive amounts at ages that don't seem appropriate, or even that there's some sort of, I don't know, human conversation that can be done with them at that point. I don't know your business as well as you do, but any opportunity to inject human to human contact about why this is happening, you're not going to be able to change minds of victims that are not, and these people are entrenched. So don't be discouraged when you are dealing with people who are entrenched. And I remember talking to someone at one of the big brokerage houses who told me, I have never seen people so determined to liquidate their entire net worth. And so I get it. And what I will say, and I've said it consistently, is you guys seem to be part of the solution in a way that the other industries don't. You guys seem actually very interested in coming up with solutions, and I applaud that. And I just, you know, for some things, there's no easy button, and this is just really increasing human contact and trying to figure out what's happening with that money.
Yeah, and you know what? Erin's point is great, that this is not an elder issue, it's an all age issues, but you may be able to leverage some of the resources that a lot of institutions have devoted recently to fighting elder abuse and fighting fraud. It's been a big focus. And so more and more institutions have some sort of elder fraud program within their institution where they do exactly what you've described, where with certain transactions, if they're done in a branch, the teller gets a stop. And the branch manager has to come out and read some things or read some advice. A bank that I used to work at had something called a trusted contact program, where when you sign up for an account, you give a trusted contact. So that if later down the line, the bank suspects something unusual, well, it's one thing if I, the bank, tell you, it's another thing if I call your mom, your sister, your brother, your husband, your wife, your cousin, your friend, whoever you've listed as a contact, and I talk to that person and say, hey, I'm really afraid your friend is being victimized here. Would you talk to them? I'm not getting through. I think they're going to lose everything. There are things that more and more institutions are doing, particularly in that elder fraud context, that I think if you think outside the box a little bit and you expand some of those programs, you may be able to have a really big impact.
Agreed. Yes.
So I see we are almost at time. Erin, I could talk to you all day on this. As I said, there's a lot that we didn't get to. So we're going to link to all those resources. ACAMS also has an upcoming webinar on this where we'll be able to spend an hour or two getting into details on this. I'll link to all of that too. There's so much more we could do. But Erin, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to everyone out there who's joined us. Please, share this, particularly with your non-financial crime people, or if you just go home and have a conversation at dinner tonight, sit around the table, bring it up with your partner, your friend, your roommate, whoever it may be, on a phone call. This is how we're going to make a difference. We got to get beyond our anti-financial crime bubble. We've got to get into the regular community. We've got to make people aware of this, because as good as Erin is, she can't prosecute all of these guys. Some of them are outside of her reach. Even if they were within our reach, we couldn't do it. So it really does depend on all of you out there to spread the word and make a difference. So thank you again for being here. Erin, I can't thank you enough. And we look forward to seeing you again next time on ACAMS Live.